Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's KDP University at Home with CG Cooper. My name is Trisha, and I'll be your host for today's event. I've been part of the KDP University team for the past couple of years, and you can hear me on several of our videos and our weekly live Wednesday webinars. But we're not here to talk to me, we're here to talk to CG Cooper. C.G. Cooper is the USA Today author of the core Justice novels, several spin-off, and a growing number of standalone novels. Upon graduating from the University of Virginia with a degree in foreign affairs, Cooper was commissioned in the United States Marine Corps and went on to serve 6 years as an infantry officer. C.G.'s final Marine duty station was in Nashville, Tennessee, where he fell in love with the laid-back lifestyle of Music City. His first published novel, Back to War, came out of a desire to link back to his time in the Marine Corps. And that novel, written as a side project, spawned many follow-up novels, several exciting spin-offs, and catapulted Cooper's career. CG now lives just south of Nashville with his wife, 3 children, and their German short-haired pointer, Liberty, who's become a popular character with the core novels. Welcome, CG.
Thank you.
So good morning. I think it's morning where you are, correct?
It is. It is. I had to do the time zone shift. I wasn't sure what time it was. You know, you have to set all kinds of alarms to make sure you don't miss it.
Right. Oh yes, because you're on vacation right now, so we're dragging
Yeah.
you away from your vacation.
No, it's all good. It's all good to give me an excuse to not sleep in until 11 o'clock for once on my vacation, you know?
All right. Well, let's get going and start talking a little bit about some of your background. I think the burning question everybody always has is, when did you decide that being an author is your calling?
Well, I'll give a quick extra on my history. So I grew up reading. You know, I was a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, so I read a lot of Forgotten Realms novels, and then I found Patricia Cornwell and John Grisham as I got older, and loved those novels. And I didn't think I qualified to be a writer. I think probably like a lot of people that are watching this or listening, that I didn't think it was something I was allowed to do because I didn't have an English background. But I had an idea for a novel. I had published something nonfiction a couple years before that, so I knew the process. And I really just thought it was an idea I was going to get out into the world, and that was it. It was one book. It was out of my head. I didn't have to think about it anymore. And professionally, I could go on to whatever else I wanted to do. But yeah, you know, a couple people started reading, and then, you know, you get 2 sales one month and then 30 the next, and you're going, huh, maybe there's something to this. And then the ideas kept coming back, and we'll probably go more into the story later. But yeah, I just kind of figured it out as I went. And again, I am not a traditionally classically trained writer. I figured it out as I went. I like to say I'm a writer hack. You know, I like to hack the system and see how it works and figure it out as I go. So that's been my bread and butter along the way, and hopefully I never stop learning.
I think that's the key, is never stop learning. As long as you can keep that learning up, then you can keep improving.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I love what you guys are doing here. You know, we get to learn from other authors. There's not a time I don't talk to another author and I don't learn something. So listen up, take notes, and I know I am. I've got my notebook sitting right here.
Well, good. We know if you're looking down, that's what you're looking at.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about the genre that you primarily write in.
Sure. So primarily political military thrillers. Again, I like to harken back to my time in the Marine Corps. Um, Hold on a second, I'm getting funky layouts here. It's just something I've always been interested in, whether it's John Grisham or Vince Flynn was a huge factor in me becoming a writer. So I love the intrigue of what's going on in Washington and what's going on in the military.
Mm-hmm. So how much of the time that you spent in the military influenced your, what you write about?
Sure. Well, I think the majority of it is, you know, obviously I have military elements in there and I have political elements, but really the thing that really that I love and my readers seem to love, and I have a huge female readership, which I love, and they've gone with me between genres and they're very forgiving. And when I dabble in something, they will experiment right along with me. But I think it's the brotherhood and the sisterhood aspect of taking care of that person next to you and doing anything for your friends and for your family. Like that's really what I try to put into really all my novels. It doesn't matter what the genre is. And I think that's what I walked away from the Marine Corps with was just a better education on, hey, how do we take care of people? How do we ask for help?
Hmm.
And really more than shooting guns or learning to call in, close air support. That's what I miss the most about the Marine Corps is that camaraderie, that brotherhood, that hey, we'll do anything for each other. So I think that probably influences my novels more than anything else.
But that's not the only genre you write in, right? You've written some standalones in
I have.
different genres.
Yeah, I have. So I've actually written middle grade as well. So middle grade
Mhm.
fantasy, The Chronicles of Benjamin Dragon. It's three novels. I wrote that a few years ago because I wanted to write something that my kids could actually read. I
Yeah.
wrote it before they could read, but now they can actually read it. And I've written in literary fiction, a little bit of historical fiction. I'd love to do more historical fiction, except I just I don't have the patience to do that much research. So it would be historical fiction light. I've got some friends. A.G. Riddle is a fantastic friend of mine, and he'll spend 2 years researching a novel. I don't have the patience and I don't have the talent to do that. So yeah, I like to bounce around and scratch that itch. I've done some post-apocalyptic, but again, I think throughout that it's kind of that same theme of hopefully the good guys always win. I believe in that myself, and the brotherhood aspect of it.
Well, you talked about the fact that you do or you don't have the patience for that long-term research for the historical novels. How much research do you do for the novels that you publish?
I don't do a lot. And maybe that's because my wife and my kids like to say I have a very, very vivid imagination. And that's why I love writing fiction, right? I don't know who said it. If anybody wonders what you're writing, just throw a unicorn in and then it's fiction. Um, so
Right.
I devour all kinds of, I still read a lot. I still research, but not research. I'm just curious about a lot of
Mhm.
things. And if you haven't seen it, Dan Brown's masterclass, he talks about write what you're curious about. And I've just taken that and that's where a lot of my ideas for novels come from. I'm curious about the country
Mhm.
of Belarus. So I have a book called The Man from Belarus coming out later this year. And it's just again,
Uh-huh.
if I'm not interested in it, it's so boring to do. So I, you
Right.
know, I kind of do a little bit of research as I go. I love Google Maps. I love being on the street and seeing exactly where the action's happening. I don't use a lot of it, but it kind of gives you that feeling of okay, where am I going? What do I need to do? I don't go on and on. I love Tom Clancy, but I will never write about a location for 20 pages. I just won't. I'll give you a couple paragraphs just so you can get the flavor of what's going on. And honestly, readers I don't think we give readers enough credit. They're very good at picking up
Mhm.
just the details they need and painting the picture themselves. We don't need to force feed them anything. Just give them just enough. I think Stephen King is famous for saying that, hey, look, everybody's going to have their own image of what your characters and what your scene looks like. Like don't don't treat them like they're stupid, right? Like give them some
Mhm.
leeway into imagining it themselves. And that is so true. Like the less I've tried to really, okay, this guy's 5'9" with brown hair and highlighted tips and great teeth. Like you don't need to do that. It's just you explain who the person is and everybody has their own idea for that.
Mhm. I think that's a really interesting call out, and the fact that different authors handle that differently. Do you think that that kind of leads to developing or finding that audience base that's going to continue, like you said, follow along with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the middle of a Pat Conroy book right now. We talked about it the other day, and it's taken me a long. I mean, I picked that book up in February, and now it's June, And it's so rich, and I mean, his writing is absolutely beautiful. I can't do that. I enjoy reading it, but only in bits. It's a lot, it's like going out and eating a 5,000 calorie meal. How many times can I do that?
Right.
So yeah, I think everybody's got their flavor, their voice.
Mhm.
Vince Flynn, as I mentioned, was one of my all-time favorites. Stephen King, I've just recently gotten into, even though his book on writing is my Bible for writing. Everybody has to do their own. And what I found was Shonda Rhimes, who wrote Grey's Anatomy and all those
Uh-huh.
other great shows, talks about this was a big eye opener for me. She said, when I realized that my viewers were spending more time with my characters than they were with their own friends and family, that opened my eyes up to what my responsibility was.
Right.
And it absolutely did to me. I have to treat these characters like real people because
Mhm.
my readers do. I mean, they really think when I killed a supporting character, ooh, I did not like those emails that came back. If I almost kill a main character, I'm going to hear about it. And because people really do, they take those characters to heart and who they are and where they're going on their path. So I have to be really careful about that. I love George R. R. Martin. I'm not going to be killing off all my characters. I'm just not, because I don't personally enjoy that, and I know my readers don't. So it's like you said, you really have to understand who your readership is. And although you're not going to give them what they want 100% of the time, you got to give them what they want 85 to 90% of the time.
So how much does that influencing your direction that you're taking your books or what you're writing about?
Um, in the sense that I think my readers and I are pretty much aligned in what our beliefs are as far as fiction goes. Politically, religiously, we're all over the map.
Mhm.
But as far as characters and stories, I like a fast story. I like characters that like to do the right thing. I love bad characters that are really bad. And my readers
Mhm.
believe the same thing. So we enjoy the same types of novels. So as long as I'm being true to that, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. If I try to go way outside my comfort zone, which sometimes I do just to see what's going to happen,
Mhm.
the reception is mixed. And again, you can't make everybody happy. I've
Right.
learned that the hard way. When I did that, the reviews showed. So I've got to
Uh-huh.
be true to myself and what my voice is. And typically, because I've been doing this long enough, that aligns with who my readers are and what they want to see as well.
You've shared a lot of really great information about your writing process and working with your readers, but let's shift gears just a little bit and talk a little bit about self-publishing. You're a self-published author. Um, what is one thing that you wish that people understood about self-publishing?
Ooh, one thing, Trisha, you're gonna ask one thing.
Now, we'll
Um,
get into more later, trust me.
I think hard work, and that's going to sound super, super simplified, but it takes hard work in all things. You have to be not just the writer, you have to be the business person. You are in control of your own destiny. And does some luck come into it? Absolutely. But if you're not working hard, if you're not taking action, if you're not learning the business, understanding how does KDP work? How does Amazon work? How do the algorithms work? What are other authors doing? If you're not looking at book covers on the bestseller list day in and day out to see what a real book cover is supposed to look like, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's not just writing. Writing to me it's the fun part, and it's also hard work, but the rest of it has to be done as well. Unless you've got somebody that's doing all the other work, and I've tried to find that person, nobody cares about my work as much as I care about my work. So I have to take personal responsibility and work my tail off. I mean, even to today, even though I have editors and proofers and all these things, um, I have to understand that it's my name that's going out there when it goes out into the world. So work hard, sit down every single day and write something. If it's a haiku, that's 3 lines, right? 575, 3 lines. Sometimes I have to trick myself into working by just doing 3 lines of something. But when you get away from it, when you get away from the habit, writing is a habit, the business is a habit. Um, you just have to understand this business inside and out, and you can't blame anybody else for not doing well. You just can't, because if you work hard enough for long enough, I believe that you will do it. You have to understand how readers work, how the publishing houses work, how Amazon works. It's a lot to know. It really is, and that's why this is not for everybody. So hard work, I think, is at the core of who I am and what you need to do to be a successful indie author.
Now, you talked a little bit about the fact that you have a team, you have your editors and you have your proofreaders, and tell me a little bit about your team and how you grew that.
Yeah, it was very organic originally. And the majority of my volunteers, I am so lucky to have some of the kindest, most helpful readers who have become friends that I've ever met. And
Mhm.
that's how it all started. It was reaching out to readers, just to see if they need anything, to see how they like the books, and not asking for anything in the beginning. It was people coming to me saying, hey, especially in the beginning, hey, I see some grammar mistakes in your books. If you'd like
Mhm.
some help, would you like some help? And look, I I don't do criticism well. So when some of those emails come across, even today, I got one this morning, and it's like, gosh, how many times have we been through that book and still there's stuff wrong, and some of it is somebody's opinion, but you have to take that seriously. You just do. It's part of what this business is. So it was those initial emails of, hey, I caught a couple things, if you would ever like some help. So I started compiling a list, and then when I finally felt comfortable, it was hey, reader, John Smith or Jane Smith, would you like to be one of my beta readers, or would you like to proof my new book, or would you? And so it really started there. And then um, as far as professional editors go, I kind of asked around other authors. So I
Mhm.
looked at, sometimes, and it's less now, but you'll see the editor listed on the book's product page, say on Amazon.
Mhm.
So that was how I found my original editor. So she was with me for a bit, and she still does some work for me. But over time, I found my real developmental editor on Upwork, who actually did some other work for me, and he and I just hit it off. And then
Mhm.
3 months ago, he had an editor who, Dana, who he's been working with. He's known her for 25 years, and she came into the picture a couple months ago. And now we've got this killer team of, they know editing way better than I do. Like, I'm terrible at editing. I can't stand editing. So I found people who could fill that expertise gap for me. And really, I think
Uh-huh.
that's what it's all about: is what are you good at? Understand that. I'm terrible at proofing and editing my own work. So I've got to
Mhm.
bring in people who know. And originally it was friends, it was family. That's a good way to start. But really, as you go, it's basically like incrementally getting more professional. Originally my book covers were okay, and over time we've ramped that up, and it's a constant game of getting better and better and better. I mean, I am making changes to 8-year-old manuscripts even today. So, it's a never-ending process.
So we always get the question of, and you alluded to this a little bit before, but about you have to sit down and write every day. So tell me about kind of what a day in the life of CG looks like. How much time do you spend on the business? How much time do you spend on the writing?
Well, that's a funny question because it's changed a lot over the years. So let me go with when I started. So when I started, I
Mhm.
still owned a business, a property management company, and it was eating me alive. I mean, really, I really enjoyed the time I got to write on my lunch breaks, and it wasn't even lunch break. I would just close my door, eat my lunch at my computer, and that's where I would write. Over
Mhm.
time, as I left that company, as I started doing this more professionally, the library was where I wrote. And so I would go, and back then, my rule was I had to write 2,000 words every single day, Monday through Friday, really. And so it was 2,000 words. And with that, I could get out, I don't know, I think it was 6 or 7 novels a year at the time.
Mhm.
Um, and on due date, I would typically write 5 to 10,000 words because I was very, very stringent on getting those done by the deadline. Now it's a little bit different because I have a few novels out there because I can kind of take my time. Kind of the goal is about 1,000 words every day. And
Okay.
because my speed, I'm not as fast as some of my friends, but I'm pretty quick. So typically for me, that's a 30 to 45 minute write. But what you have to understand is, people hear that, they're like, wow, that's all you work all day? No, absolutely not. Like that frees me up to do the other stuff, which is the most important thing I can do is be engaging with my readers. So if
Mhm.
there's an email that comes in from anybody who's either contact form on my website or email me directly, from one of my autoresponders, I'm on top of that first. Everything else gets
Mhm.
ignored. And then I move on to, okay, advertising, marketing, social media, all that kind of fun stuff. And that's an all day process. I mean, I am always thinking about the business. So I have a hard time turning that off because I
Mhm.
do love it. I mean, I'm on vacation and I'm working because I love what I do. I really do, and I'm very, very lucky in that. But what I had to do a couple of years ago, because I burned out 2 times and I never want to do that again. I had to
Mhm.
step back and say, okay, what do I need to do? What's a perfect day for me so that I can do this forever? So I can do this until the day I die. And so I have to throw in some time in there for working out, family is very important to me. I've got a wife and 3 kids. I'm always there in the morning. I'm always there, especially through this COVID thing.
Yeah.
I'm one of the teachers homeschooling my kids. So
Mhm.
I have to build my schedule so all that can happen, but it also has to be something that I can do for a long time because, like I said, I don't want to burn out again. That was not fun. Being, looking at a screen and going, I don't want to do this anymore was kind of a sad feeling. So you really have to juggle your own personal, hey, how much can I take to
Mhm.
what do I need to do business wise?
So you talked about the fact that you had, what you were doing prior to writing. At what point did you figure out that, you didn't have to write on your lunch hour anymore? You could transition to being a full-time writer and make a living at this.
Well, I was lucky that so I left that company. I tried to go work for somebody else for about 2 weeks. That did not work out well. Apparently, I don't do well. Not that there was any butting heads or anything, but I'm just used to being my own boss, and
Mhm.
hopefully, I get to be my own boss forever. I am very independent, but I was very lucky that I asked my wife for 6 months to write, and I said, look, I'm going to see how many books I can get out in that time. I think I did 2.5 in that time period and learned a lot about the business. So I spent a lot of time in the Brentwood Library up in Williamson County in Tennessee, and it was a great spot. It was my kind of quiet spot to get away. I would put my headphones on and just work, work, work. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of how it all started. I immersed myself in the business, in the writing of it, and really enjoyed the process. And again, you go through different iterations of you. I was talking to a writer friend yesterday, and sometimes we have to trick ourselves into writing. It's like, okay,
Right.
I can't go do anything until I write 1,000 words or 2,000 words, and that's powerful. I mean, you have to do that. Or writing sprints. I mean, for a long time, I did writing sprints. Start with 5 minutes and then go to 15, then go to 30. And I've done that with other
Mhm.
writers in the same room, and where it's peer pressure. So it really just depends on what your schedule looks like. Fit the writing in whenever you can. Some people write at 3 in the morning because it's the only time they have. Hey, everybody's got to do
Right.
what they've got to do.
Okay. So it sounds like, it doesn't always, it's not a natural, flow, because everybody has this kind of image that writers just all of a sudden they get this burst of inspiration and then they sit down and they write out a manuscript. And so what I'm hearing is that's not necessarily how things work for you.
Not for me. And I've been through different iterations. When I first started, it was very, I was we I guess we call ourselves pantsers, right? Fly by the seat of my
Right.
pants. don't outline anything, just go, go, go. And as I progressed, I thought I needed to get more professional. So I started outlining and storyboarding and all this. And to be quite honest, it took all the fun out of it for me. So about 2 years
Mhm.
ago, I said, nope, no more. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back to what I really enjoyed. So now when I sit down, I have no idea what I'm going to write. I will sit down and I'll write the last or read the last one or two chapters that I wrote the day before and then jump right into it, kind of sit there, meditate for a minute, kind of let the, and I won't bring spirituality or anything, but into it, but Pressfield talks about your muse, and I honestly believe that
Mhm.
you have to tap into something that's bigger than what you are. So figure out whatever that is, and get the ideas from there. Because I really feel most days, pretty much every day that I write now, I'm more of a conduit than the actual source of the story. So I'm tapping into something. Even Elizabeth Gilbert talks about it in her book Big Magic. There's ideas floating around everywhere. It's our job to grab that idea and throw it onto paper. How you do it is really up to you, but if you let those ideas float away, they're just going to float away. So I hope that when I sit down and write, I grab onto that idea and just run with it and really just try to zone out. I love those days when I sit down and write and I get finished. I'm like, I go back and I kind of read a couple sentences. I'm like, who wrote that? Like those are the best days because that's not me anymore. That was like an easy day. And then I get to go walk away and go, play Fortnite with my son or whatever I want to do. But those are really good days when you can tap into, and it's not every day, but you have to sit down and, it may not be 7 days a week, but I would say 5 days a week at least, sit down and write something. Doesn't matter what it is,
Mhm.
just sit down and write. And you have to be disciplined enough to do that. Again, back to my hard work, right? Like do the hard work of sitting down and showing up. And most of the time, the rest will take care of itself.
Good advice. Um, so sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Give me a minute. I'll regroup and we'll go back to it.
Just tap into your muse, Trisha.
There you go. There you go. Well, you've given me so much to work with. There's too much. I gotta be like, what thread do I pull on next? So, what did it feel like the first time that you hit the Amazon charts bestseller list or USA Today's bestseller list? What did that feel like?
Well, I honestly, I mean, in the beginning, it was kind of cool, because especially as a new writer, you're constantly checking what your rankings are. You're constantly, oh, I sold another book. And I know that feeling. And still, there are days, on launch days where I'm tracking that. And now it's more for informational purposes and for planning for the next time. But it was a good feeling. But then you got to move past it because it's really easy for people to say, hey, I'm a USA Today best-selling author. Honestly, the only reason I talk about it now is it looks good on a cover, and it makes people click. That's really the only thing that I care about now is, okay, how can I get somebody to click and to read the description of my book and possibly download my novel? That's
Hmm.
really all I care about. The awards and all that kind of stuff, if you're chasing that, some people really enjoy that. They submit their books for all these kinds of awards. I don't know if readers, I mean, none of my readers have ever come to me and said, hey, I I started reading you because I saw you were on a bestseller list. That it doesn't work that way. It just
Hmm.
doesn't. I think it's another stamp of approval for people. It's a little bit more validation if they are going to find you and you're a new author to them. But if that's what you're chasing, I don't know. For me personally, it doesn't work. I have to be going for whether it's connection with my readers or a more fulfilling experience for myself or straight up, hey, how many units can I sell? Like what does my income look like? Like to me, those are much better metrics than
Hmm.
trying to get on some list. So that's just me.
Okay. Well, you recently released a new book, Blood of My Kin. Can you tell me a little bit about the book?
Yeah. So it's the second novel in the Tom Greer series. So it's a spin-off of the Core Justice series.
Okay.
And the first novel was I don't even know if I want to talk about where that came about. Let's just say sometimes you get emails from people that don't quite sit well. And I just, I'm a pretty personal guy. I can be an emotional guy. I don't get angry or anything, but I tend to internalize things. So the one time, one of the times I actually got smart, I instead of responding to that email, I went and I sat down and it became this was my response to that reader or whoever that was. I think it was a reviewer or just somebody who was angry at something or angry at the world. And so that's where that book started. I channeled that anger, that frustration into this scene, and that scene turned into this character. And it was a very that series is much more action oriented. It moves along
Mhm.
really, really quickly. It's more raw than my Core Justice series. So the second novel is more about, so Tom Greer is a former SEAL who's now an airline pilot. And about 5 years ago, his two children were kidnapped, and he thinks, he's told that they were dead. So now what is he doing as a former SEAL? He's tracking down the people who took his kids, the
Right.
natural thing you're going to do in the world,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Um, Again, one of the fantasies that I get to live out in fiction. But a lot of it is, hey, what would I do if this was my kids? And it's channeling that emotion in a positive way. And again, I have to figure out, if you read the first chapter of either of those two novels, they are a little disturbing. So how do I turn that into classic C.G. Cooper? Hey, there's a message, right?
Mhm.
And really what those novels are about is it's all about family. Like, what are you willing to do for family, to keep your
Mhm.
family, to save your family, to protect your family? So Blood of My Kin is very much the second step. And I don't want to give away too much because then it'll give away what happened at the end of the first novel. But it's
Right.
it's it's a man who is trying to figure out who he is within his family.
Mhm.
Is he a former SEAL? Can he do all these crazy things? Absolutely. He runs into gunfire and doesn't even think about it. But it's very much a story of family and what we do for one another. So that one was a fun one to write, and I'll write the third one at some point. But right
Mhm.
now I'm in the middle of a lot of Core Justice and
Mhm.
ideas for possible sort of romance novels with a lot of military thrown in. So I'm influenced by everything, Trisha.
Well, good. I can't wait to see where that goes.
Yeah.
That should be fun. So we've talked a lot about kind of your process for writing, what inspires you. Let's go and flip over to more of the business aspect. We get a ton of questions. We usually see a lot of individuals who are just getting started in their writing career or are aspiring to be authors. And the first thing they always want to know is, what do I do to get more readers? How do I market my book? So what's the first thing that you would share with them? Like the one thing that you absolutely have to do when you release a book?
I'm going to give you the unpopular answer. Write
Okay.
your next book. You probably have stats on this, but the likelihood of hitting any kind of traction with one novel is, the odds are against you very much. So the best thing you can do is write your next novel, and that's not just, I know people think that, oh, he's just saying that because he's written a few books. What that also does is it gets you out of falling in love with that one novel, right? Get on to another work, get back to work again, doing what you're supposed to be doing. I mean, if we're not writing, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. The business stuff, it's all fun, advertising, you can learn all kinds of things. But really, what you need to be doing is writing, because let's say somebody picks up your book. Let's
Hmm.
say somebody downloads your first novel. What are they going to look for? Hopefully, if you're going to be writing in a series, which I highly recommend, they're going to be looking for your next book. So what do you tell them? Do you tell them that, oh, I don't know, I haven't even thought about it? Or do you tell them, well, that one's going to be released at the end of this year? It's much better
Hmm.
to say, hey, it's coming, because if you say, oh, I don't know if I'm going to write the second one, you just lost that person. They're like, oh, this person's, they wrote this cliffhanger ending and now they're not going to write another novel. Like, what is that? It's unprofessional is really what it is. So if you have to plot out, like, 3 or 4 novels in a series, go for it. Obviously, if you're doing more literary fiction and you feel like, it's very much a standalone, It's harder that way.
Mhm.
For me personally, my standalones don't do as well as my series do, just because you don't have anything for them to follow up with if they really like it. And my standalones, my readers have. I mean, if you look at To Live, which was very much literary fiction, my reviews for that are the highest of any novel that I've written. But there's no follow up to that, and I knew that. Like going into it, I knew. So really the best thing that people can do is just keep writing, write that next novel. Um, as far as marketing goes, and I know you'll have more questions about this, marketing is pretty broad. I'm not the guy that can give you the definition of what that is. I think it's important to separate marketing from advertising. Marketing is a lot of things. Marketing to me also includes answering emails, right?
Mhm.
Answer every email that comes in, because people will remember that. If they shoot you an email, make it a little bit personal for them. Really engage with them, because you have no idea where that relationship, you have no idea if this is somebody who is going to turn around and tell 100 of their friends that you have got to pick up this person's novel. That's happened to me, right? Like, some of my readers are my biggest fans. They know my novels inside and out. When you get that word of mouth, that's the best marketing you could get, right? Like when a
Mhm.
friend comes up to you and says, "Hey, you have to listen to this podcast, or you have to go see this video on KDP University," and that's a friend you really trust, you're probably going to go and at least check it out for a couple
Mhm.
minutes. That's just the way it works. When somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, you have got to go watch Yellowstone," I was like, "What is this Yellow?" And then by the third person that told me the same thing, I knew I had to go watch it, right? And of course, I loved it because they're
Right.
friends of mine and they know what I like. So when you can get to that word of mouth, then you're not worried about, okay, social media and where do I need to be? Because for me personally, social media is really the icing on the cake. It gives you another way to engage with your readership. It is not a place to sell novels for me. It's just not. I
Mhm.
can't I can't say I've ever sold a novel through there. Now maybe from some advertising back in the day when Facebook ads worked for me, but I've had to move on to other things. But social media to me is more of an engagement tool than a selling tool. Again, for me, for my genre, for my readers, that's a way for them to connect with me. And that's the way I have to use that tool, because there's a lot going on in social media and a lot that you can get distracted with. So, focus on what you're good at, and I don't know, learn to have fun with it too. I
Right.
think that's a big one that we miss. Like, if you're not having fun with it, maybe you shouldn't be doing that part of the business, or having somebody else do it. Maybe your wife is better at it, or your husband's better at social media. Maybe have them help you out with it. Because in the beginning, I mean, trust me, my wife has helped me out with a lot in my business, and God bless her. She has put up with a lot of my, orneriness, and like, hey, why can't we do this and why can't we do that? But she's always been there. And now, luckily, I can say, hey, you know what? When that book is finished, I'll get it to you when it's nice and clean and you don't have to edit anything. But in the beginning, we really kind of just do what we need to do.
So in the beginning, was she an integral part of your team? Like, was she doing the editing and everything like that for you?
She was proofing, she was editing, I don't know if there was a job she didn't do other than press publish, because I'm the one that controls the KDP back office. But I mean, she did everything. She helped me with ideas. She's helped me with book titles, with book. She has a great eye for book covers. I'll give her three options and she'll say, nope, nope, yes, that one. And she has a great eye for that.
Mhm.
Again, it's knowing what everybody's good at, what people's talents are. My wife won't write a novel. She never wants to write a novel, but she loves reading. So she'll tell me whether or not, hey, this resonates or it doesn't. This sounds great, or maybe you should think about a different character name here because this one's way too complicated. But yeah, she's helped me out with pretty much everything in this business.
Nice. It's good that you have that support network.
Oh, yeah, very, very lucky on that.
So let's go back to, I think you alluded during your talk about how you market, that I think you keep changing. So I was going to ask you, kind of talk me through your step-by-step marketing plan every time you launch a new novel, but it sounds to me like that may change for you every time you launch a new novel. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. As much as I would love to have that 25-point checklist for my launch. And some people do. I mean, they are very, very organized. They're much more organized than I am. I don't know. Maybe it's because I am a little more emotional in the way that I deal with things, and I'm a little more off the cuff. I just, sometimes it's the flavor of the novel, the way that I want to launch it, the stories that I want to tell. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, we missed the first part of that, if you wouldn't
Okay.
mind repeating.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes it's the flavor of the novel. Say Blood of My Kin. I knew it was going to be for a certain demographic of my readers and maybe not so much. So I tried to tell the story in a way that was relatable to them.
Uh-huh.
So especially if you're jumping around genres, I think your launches should be different.
Hmm.
Sometimes a genre is going to be great on Facebook. Sometimes it's going to be great on Instagram. Sometimes it's not going to be great on any of those. And email marketing is how you're going to have to hit your readers.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's all ads. It really just depends. I think you have to look at, and this is what I do, I look at what that novel is, what is the message that I'm trying to put out, and how is that going to be hopefully receive the best from the world.
Hmm.
So I look at my readers first. I want to take care of my readers, number one, and then the rest of the world. Like, how can I get more readers into the shoot and turn them into hopefully hardcore fans? Because I think that's one thing that doesn't come up a lot anymore. I know in the beginning we used to talk about that a little bit more. You have your casual readers, and then you have your hardcore readers, and then everything in between. And really understanding how to talk to all those subsets is super, super important. So I think that's also important in launches. Hey, who is my audience? Who am I trying to target today? Is it the casual reader, or is it my hardcore fans? And sometimes I like to take care of my readers that have been around forever. Do
Hmm.
giveaways or give away, free novels or signed paperbacks or whatever to take care of them because they've been with me from the beginning, right? Like, I don't
Hmm.
mind giving away novels to them because they have supported everything that I've done. So really understand that. How are you trying to get that message out in the world?
Is there one thing that you do for every book release, no matter what? This is like the go-to. I always do this when we're talking about advertising or marketing a new
Um,
release.
sure. Well, I always send an email out to my readers. If you're not building an email list from day one, you are doing it wrong. It's so much easier these days. I mean, I don't even know how many email marketing companies there are that will set you up in a matter of hours. It's super, super easy to
Uh-huh.
do. So make sure you have that capture on your website. Make sure there's links all, in your front matter of your book, in the back matter, and give them something. So email is the most important. I've dabbled with some text marketing, so I've got some people that I text on release, but really email is still the most important to me.
Okay. So we're going to get into answering some questions uh, that were submitted to us. But before I do that, what was the most surprising thing about self-publishing that you found?
Ooh, the most surprising thing. Um, I think the most surprising thing was that it's always changing. um, I think you get in the business and you're like, oh, at some point I'm gonna figure this out. I got it. I don't think I will ever wake up on a day and say that again.
Mhm.
I got in the hole of doing that, maybe once or twice, thinking that I had it all figured out, and then, an algorithm changed or the rules changed or whatever. So just know that it's always going to change, and that's whether you're traditionally published or an indie author. That was a big surprise to me that I really thought it was just going to be about churning out more books and doing the right amount of advertising, doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's not like that, and I don't think it ever will be. And if it is, it'll be a little boring anyway. So I think that was the biggest surprise for me.
That's a good call out because in business we try to, figure it out and then build that business plan and have that structure and having to kind of reinvent that every time, I think is an interesting challenge to call out.
It really is, and it's all about being flexible and being able to adapt to change. Because look, this it's still it was the Wild West when I started back in 2011, 2012. It still is. I mean, the rules are changing, royalties are changing, new companies are coming in. So
Mhm.
you have to be able to flex with that because it'll make you really uncomfortable, especially in the beginning. And that's not to say I don't have days where I'm not uncomfortable. I mean, the economy
Mhm.
affects what we do for a living, and being cognizant of what's going on in the world is also important, but not freaking out, right? You still got to sit down, you
Mhm.
still got to write, you got to keep doing it because as authors, we are emotional people. And as I've mentioned, I tend to internalize a lot, and I have to understand that, you know what, just because something crazy is going on in the world, that doesn't mean that I should not sit down and do my work that I'm supposed to do. So it's a lesson that I have to keep learning, but hopefully I do. I keep going on that.
So we have a really, well, we've got lots of really great questions that are coming in, but one of them is, do you use a notebook to catch ideas before they go out of their head, or do you kind of just channel it when you sit down?
I used to. I used to try to capture everything, and then just kind of like getting really systematic on writing, it became a chore.
Hmm.
And it stopped being fun, all those little note cards and notes and files. And I mean, I really tried to be like really, really organized about it. Now, if I honestly believe, for me, if an idea is solid enough, it will stick with me. I will dream about it. I will think about it while I'm making coffee, while I'm going for runs. It won't go away. So if the idea is powerful enough, it'll stick with me. My job is to get it down on paper before, in a novel before it goes away. But again, there's a billion ideas out there. Don't worry about there not being another great idea, but latch on to the ones that you really care about.
So we have a question about how you interact with your editors. How big are the changes that your editors suggest? So, for example, do you hand them the novel and they come back and it's completely rewritten, or the suggestions are to completely overhaul it? And then, how much debate do you have with them?
So from the beginning, my first drafts tend to be pretty clean as far as story wise. I'm one of those weirdos
Uh-huh.
who can. My wife gives me a hard time because I'll read 20 novels at a time, and somehow I can just put a bookmark in my head and then go back to it in 3 months and start where I left off. So I can do that. So when I come back to a novel that I'm writing, they're pretty clean. Um, the back and forth is not a lot of back and forth anymore. It is much more, we've built that trust. So I can give them the novel. I give it to my dev editor, and really he knows my voice. He knows exactly how I can write. So he goes in there and makes the changes. One of the things that is probably one of the bane of my existence is track changes in Word. Um, I cannot stand getting a document back with all these track changes. It gives me like a complex, and I just want to run for the hills and never write again. So I really worked up to, and this took years to find somebody who I could trust enough to give my novel to and say, I trust you to make the changes. Now, if there's anything substantive, if it's going to change the story, let's talk about that first. But I'm very lucky that he is a phenomenal storyteller as well. So we have a very good working relationship. So now the way it works is it goes to him. If there's anything big, we talk through it. Typically there's not, because I've hashed out most of it anyway. And then we'll talk about it after he's done. Then it goes to the line editor. So they have that conversation between them. If there's anything big, again, it comes back to me. We have a conference call. So far, there haven't been any huge issues. I trust them. They're very, very good at what they do. And then it comes back to me and I do kind of the final read through, and then I send it through to my beta readers. So my beta readers are the ones who have been with me forever. It's kind of a treat for them to be able to read it before the rest of the world does. And they catch stuff all the time that the rest of us miss.
Hmm.
And a lot of it is they know my characters inside and out. They know my world very well, but they catch grammar stuff that we've missed. And before my books are published, I have 60 some people who have put their eyes on the novel, and still there are things that slip through. I know we've all had that experience of you pick up a paperback from the airport and it's a Stephen King novel and there's a typo in there. You're like, how in the world, did this slip through? But it happens, and you got to kind of just take it and run with it. It is what it is. There's going to be errors,
Mhm.
whatever. At least now we can go back and fix that manuscript whenever we want, because we can go into KDP, change it, and within a couple hours that manuscript is fixed. So that's a huge blessing that we have now that we did not have 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, so I really give a lot of leeway to my editors, and that was very much on purpose because I don't like the editing process personally. I know some writers who love it, and they want to be in, and,
Mhm.
and they love it when they get 60 pages of notes back from their editor. If that happened to me, I would not be in this business anymore. I could not do that. So yeah, I've really tailored it to kind of my personality and to
Uh-huh.
what I can deal with on the editing proofing side.
Well, it's good thing that you found that person that you feel that you can trust with your voice. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if worse comes to worse, I'm gonna kidnap him and put him in my house and never let him go away because I could not do it without Paul.
So I see you have been reading Stephen King lately.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Um, okay, so this is a really interesting question. What advertising resource has gotten your books into the hands of the most new readers? If you had to pick one.
Um, Recently it would be Amazon ads,
Okay.
honestly. It's that's still a moving target. It always changes. It's not easy to use, but when you can be on the product page of another novel, say somebody's looking up Tom Clancy and I can be in that sponsored products line, that's really, really powerful. And I don't know of anywhere else you can do that.
Hmm.
I love BookBub ads. They've done well for me. They're super easy to use. Their back office is fantastic. But I think it depends on what genre you're in. I know people that are still doing really, really well with Facebook ads. Me, not so much. I jumped into it again earlier this year, and I didn't get a lot of traction from it. So really, I think I would have to say Amazon ads, and that's not just because I'm sitting here on a KDP University call.
Well, I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah.
Um, we have another question. So I'm going to phrase it just a little bit different, but do you ever include friends and family in the novels? And then, like, do they know about it beforehand?
So I get this question a lot, like a lot,
Yeah.
a lot. Where do your characters come from? And really, I'm not using somebody directly, but yeah, I mean, everybody that is revolves around me influences what I write. The warden's son was a friend of mine. We were out to dinner, and he told me that his father was a federal prison warden, and I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, what? And they lived on the prison grounds and all these things, and I was like, I'm just sitting there shocked that this was a thing. And what really got me and what started the story was he said my dad always told me if there was an emergency not to go to the guards but to go to the trustees and the prisoners, and the prisoners would take care of us, would take care of the kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is something that I never would have. So I interviewed him, kind of to get the feel of how the prison works, and that's how the idea of the story. And I threw him in as a character. It's not exactly who he is, and I think I did it justice. But yeah, those are fun. And now I really love to put readers into my novels. I'm writing one live right now, so my readers are actually reading along as I'm writing it, and I'm using my readers and a little bit of, I had them submit their names and a little bit about who they are and where they came from. So I get to use their backgrounds a little bit, and that's been really fun because I get to personalize it for my readers who have been with me through everything. And that's been really cool. When people are like rooting Dottie on, like they're rooting real Dottie on, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I love doing that. I try to make them all good characters, although my readers really love to volunteer to be the bad characters. I mean, when I asked for volunteers for villains, it was like everybody, yes, I want to be the bad guy. So that's really fun to write too.
Ironically, you are not the first author that I've talked to that said that. There was another author that we had on that talked about the fact that one of his coworkers wanted to be a villain in his story too. So that seems to be, I think it might be because we can't be that in real life. So, hey, stick me in your novel and make me a bad guy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it just shocked me. I was like, I mean, men, women, it didn't matter. It didn't matter backgrounds. Everybody wanted to be the villain. And it was, I got a really good laugh out of it.
That's funny. All right, I think we have one more question, so I'm going to find a really, really good one. Um, and I think it's going to be, what is the one piece of advice that you would leave for new KDP authors?
I would say, and this is going to sound really strange, um, stay away from excuses. I think
Okay.
it's really easy for us to blame something else for our failure and what we're doing. Oh, Amazon changed the rules again. Oh, Facebook increased their rates again. You know what? Let's control what we can. And one of the things we can control is what we write and when we write and how much we write. So
Mhm,
let's work on that first. It's something that I struggle with. Sometimes I look at my dashboard and wait, well, hold on, where did all my sales go? And I have to have faith that if I keep doing the right thing, I'm going to keep being able to do this for a career.
mhm,
And I'm very much a no excuses guy, a no blame. I really think we have to live that way in this, in this career, or
mhm.
else we just start blaming everything else for our lack of success. And it's easy to fall into because I've done it in the past, but we got to just snap out of it and really surround yourself with people, with other authors, meet other authors who are positive and moving forward, and use that momentum to help yourself as well. And they will help you. I mean, you want to be around people who will call you out when you throw out an excuse and they're like, hey, look, no, that's not really a problem. This is really what the problem is. Let's fix it and move on. And I've been really lucky to have friends, fellow authors who've been able to do that for me.
I know I said that was the last question, but I have a follow-up question to what you just said
Oh,
because I
good.
think it was really powerful. Where did you find those other authors?
Um, just reaching out to authors that I admired, or one LT Ryan Lee is a very, very good friend of mine. He's in exactly the same genre. We are, some people would call us competitors. We're not competitors. I reached out to him. He lived in Atlanta. I lived in Nashville, and I said, hey, I had some questions about your editing process. That's how I found my editor, was his editor, and we just started talking. And then Robert J. Crane, who writes mostly fantasy and some high fantasy, he wrote a blog post, and I reached out to him. It was life changing for me, for my career, what he wrote. It changed everything, the way that I thought about marketing. And so I reached out to him and I just said, thank you so much for what you wrote. I really appreciate it. I've instituted this, and this from what you did, when you said, and this is how it's changed. And that started the dialogue. And then when I was in Minnesota, I visited with him and met him personally. And now the group of us, it's grown to more people. We get together twice a year in person.
Mhm.
Last year was Asheville. It was supposed to be Seattle last month, but we get together and just try to help each other out. So it's really about just reaching out, not asking for anything, but just kind of like almost comparing notes and, hey, I really appreciate what you wrote out here, thanking them, this is what I've done, if I can ever be of assistance, let me know. Because I get a lot of emails of, I'm all about answering questions. If you go to cg-cooper.com and go to the contact form, ask me any questions, and I will answer them for you. But when people start asking me for reviews and I've never met them or read their books, like, don't do that. Get to know people on a personal level before you do that. And then they'll be happy to do really anything that you need.
Awesome. Really good advice. Thank you so much. So just a reminder, we're recording today's event and we'll be posting it to our help pages and our Kindle Direct Publishing YouTube channel. And if you enjoyed today's event, check out our upcoming sessions with Melissa Foster, Alron Kong, and Elizabeth Hunter on our webinars help page. We'll provide the link to the recording and the upcoming sessions in tomorrow's follow-up email. But special thank you to CG for such a great time and really, really great information.
Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, if people have questions for me, my email is cgc@cg-cooper.com. Feel free to email me and I'll answer anything that you've got. And thanks again for having me.
Absolutely, more than welcome. All right, thank you all for joining us today. And as always, happy publishing.